Hello and welcome to the My Dietitian Journey podcast. My name is Adam, your co-host and producer. With me, of course, Felicia Peraza of Peraza Nutrition and My Dietitian Journey. Today we're going to get into some stuff to help dietitians with their private practice and all of their dietitian endeavors. What are we getting into today, Felicia?
We are going to talk about the skills that you would need in private practice, top ones that I typically am using, and how that can help you succeed.
Skills to be a successful entrepreneur in the dietetics field. What do you want to talk about first?
Organization, partially because that's my favorite.
Organization.
Yes.
Organizational skills.
Yes.
How to be organized.
How to be more organized, why it matters.
How to turn yourself into an organization.
Yes.
All right. So what are we talking specifically with that?
Well, first, just want to talk about why that actually matters.
Can you define what you mean by being organized?
For me, it's, and this looks different to everybody, but having like a structure, a framework, having checklists, to-do lists, and this can really vary by the person, but in private practice, you are juggling a lot, clients, billing, doctors, day-to-day operations, the accounting, all of that kind of stuff. So you're juggling a lot of things. So you kind of need to make sure that you're keeping on top of all of those things to keep you in a forward-moving direction and, with success in, keeping your client load and getting paid on time and all of those things. So
staying organized, having your stuff together.
Yes.
Your S together. It's probably pretty hard when you are all by your lonesome in a private practice or a small business with 2-3 people. Everything falls on you. Yeah. I know that there's a lot of specific techniques that you have that help you stay organized. Do you want to talk about any of those?
Yes. So the first is spreadsheets. We talked about Excel a few times, but these are really helpful for accounting and even just very simple stuff like being able to add and subtract. You don't necessarily think about how much time that takes to just do that manually.
Arithmetic?
Yes, on the accounting spreadsheet. So I keep track of all my finances, so my income, my expenses, and then also my appointments and my referrals. So that can keep me organized too. Another thing is your licenses and renewals for stuff. So I'm a dietitian, I'm also a personal trainer, also a certified health coach, and all of those things together, they all have different continuing ed, and being able to keep track of when my certification ends and I need to renew it, when I need to have certain CPEs done by, and then also I think I have state licensure too. So all of those things together, it's a lot to manage. And so I have actually a spreadsheet that I created with how many CPEs I have already, and then when my next renewal date is. And then I'm not thinking about it constantly. I could just quickly check in on that spreadsheet and have the information readily available.
It's an issue. You have a tool to help you solve that issue. Excel may seem intimidating to people if they're not familiar with it. I assure you, it is just like any other piece of software that it has a lot of function. You don't need nearly as much knowledge of it as an expert would have to make good use of it. It's the kind of thing where it can do insane calculations and manage data sets in the millions or billions of data points, depending on your computer. But for you, having just a little graph where you track some numbers and then you learn, maybe 6 formulas, you're good. You need to just barely scratch the surface with Excel. And that kind of goes with a lot of things. When you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, when you're your own boss, when you're running your own thing, that's going to be sort of thematic throughout this, where you don't need to deep dive on all these things to make having a working knowledge of them useful. So Excel is one such thing where you only need a rudimentary understanding of how it works to make a good use of it and use it to track what you have. Learning how to format a little bit too with Excel, like, color coding things and making them look visually appealing so that when you look at something, it's not just black and white with a bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
That's helpful. And you can, there's so much on YouTube in terms of how to use Excel and how to use it effectively. It's one tool that you can use for a variety of things. As Felicia just said, she uses it for accounting and managing her expenses and income, I guess, is what you do. And then also with just having reminders and dates and things keeping it organized for your continuing ed, just tracking things. It's really useful for that.
Yeah, the tracking is huge. And so kind of along with that, with tracking, overall is just having like systems in place. So we mentioned Excel, but I use, and this is not sponsored by anybody, I use a lot of Google Drive products. And so in using Google Drive, I use their Google Keep, which is a task list. And so I have like running tasks on it, and you can like check them off. You could put reminders on there, and then I can copy that into Google Drive to save it for later. But I use Google Drive to have like documents for my like system stuff. So like onboarding clients, I have a system in place, what things I go over on the initial call with somebody to schedule the appointment. And then, things like a process for coaching clients. So I have a list of what things need to be sent to somebody. When I call an insurance, I have a process in place for that, and like an actual like list and a checklist. And this not only helps you to make sure that you're not missing anything, keeping organized, but if you hire another dietitian in your practice, or you have somebody, that you contract, whether it's like admin or something like that, a scheduler.
Or a video editor, perhaps.
Yes, it's all in place. And then you can just give that to somebody. So it's already streamlined and they know what to do, and it's laid out for them.
Yeah, Felicia uses a lot of Google products and services. It's not like you need to clarify that you're not sponsored by Google. Everyone's using Google stuff. Anyone who's listening to this or watching this on YouTube right now is using a Google service. So just to put that out there. But Felicia uses Google Keep. That's one thing you use. And Google Drive.
Yes.
They're useful. You should explore them if this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Felicia and I work together, and recently I started using her stuff on Google Keep, and we connected via that to share checklists and task lists. It's very useful. It's just another tool to solve another problem that you will inevitably have as a private practice dietitian, or just, a small business owner in general.
Yeah. And even like with Google Keep, you could share the list with somebody else. And so I have it set up to use for an intern that I have coming on board in a couple of weeks. And it's just so easy to be able to see like what tasks they've checked off already. But you can easily share that list with somebody. And then I use Google Calendar with that too. And then I set reminders for stuff for like weekly repetitive tasks. So like every week I'm checking my calendar for availability if I need to update my availability. I have on there like create podcast outline and check appointment forms and things that I do every week, but just to, again, keep myself organized, keep myself on track with everything. And then again, if I'm going to onboard somebody else, they have access to that, and I could just share the calendar. I could share those tasks with them, and it makes it a lot easier to make sure that they're not missing anything either.
So you're also very organized physically too with your stuff. Well, physically and digitally. You don't have clutter around. You don't have things on your desk or paperwork floating around, and you have a clean desktop on your computer, and things are very organized in a systematic way. You have a folder system, a branching folder system, which is sort of just every computer has that, but you use it really effectively. Do you want to get into that and why that's important, why you feel it's important at least?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the type of person where, if my space is cluttered, I feel like I can't concentrate because there's too much around me, and then I can't find things. And so that's going to take up time, searching for something. So if I know, I always store this in this file, when I need to access something like information about insurance or information about, like a checklist or finding something, I can easily, like ethics document, need to find that. And so I have a folder and I know exactly where to locate it. So I'm not like searching through things and wasting a lot of time. So that's a huge thing. And then also, as being a dietitian, I need to make sure that I'm maintaining, HIPAA compliance and confidentiality. And so making sure that I'm not losing paperwork in like a shuffle if I'm not organized and I have a lot of stuff going on and accidentally throw something away versus, having to shred it. So that's also another really important thing with keeping organized too.
Yeah, physically, Felicia has a filing cabinet.
Yes.
And it's locked and it follows whatever guidelines are needed for HIPAA and stuff like that. And then she's also got a bunch of documents saved on her computer. Everything's encrypted to make sure that it falls in line with HIPAA. The point is, when you need to find something, you need to be able to find it quickly, and it helps to not waste time looking for things, which no one's perfect. You lose stuff every once in a while, but if you have a system in place and you maintain a habit of keeping things organized and not cluttered and not just a mess on your desk and whatnot, I'm speaking as a sort of from experience. That's me in a nutshell. My desk is a mess, and I lose things sometimes. Fortunately, I'm not the one running the business, so how convenient for us that's your job, not mine. So, another skill of yours that's really valuable is time management.
Yes.
You're really good with that. You don't waste time. You seem to get a lot done every day, all the time, and I think you should maybe get into what you do and why. But maybe we should just define time management and say why it's important.
I mean, it's really important because if you are an entrepreneur, you are your own boss. I mean, that's the whole point. And, you don't have someone who's looking down to say to you, you have to do this by this deadline. You're the one setting those deadlines up. You're the one that has to keep on task with everything. And so you don't have someone who's, pushing you and checking in to make sure that you've completed things or telling you what to do. So you need to be able to, take the reins yourself. Do you want to give the actual definition?
Yeah, time management, the ability to use one's time effectively or productively, especially at work. So that's, just to define our term here. It's something Felicia's good at. And the skills we just talked about, where if you're organized and you have systems and you run off of lists and you set reminders and schedule yourself and schedule things out and keep yourself decluttered, it helps to promote effective use of your time. It makes you better at time management. And that's, it's funny that that's the case because you're in a way you can set yourself up for success. Mm-hmm. You can develop a good system for things and staying organized, and then it helps you get more done.
Yes.
You don't waste time, and you're like laser surgical with your approach to using your time. Felicia has schedules for everything. Every day, things are blocked out. She has a planner. It's color-coded. It's very, very sophisticated to my eyes. When I look at it, I don't know. I don't understand how everyone has their own system, but like Felicia, the point is that she uses her time extremely effectively.
Yeah, and
out of necessity.
And
really.
that's everyone has their own system. I originally was like only paper calendar person, and then I started to realize that it's helpful to have like a digital checklist. So like my paper calendar I still use, and it's still very much color coded, so I can quickly look at it. But I also have like random things on the calendar, and then the day before, just before the podcast started, reorganized what things that I didn't need to get to today that I didn't get to, but it wasn't a priority, put them on for Friday or put them on for next week, and then reprioritized my Friday list. So that's something to keep in mind too, is you want to find a system that's going to work for you. But when you're creating, your daily tasks and things to do, having priorities in place is really key.
It's super lame to say, find what works for you. I'm going to be honest with you. That's like when someone has a problem and you say, well, just keep at it. All right, let's give some practical advice. Literally, what tools specifically do you find most effective for you to help facilitate time management?
So one is blocking my days. So I have
What do you mean by that?
So every day, and this changes based on summer or fall, but I have specific days where I see clients and my time frame of seeing clients. So
you block tasks.
Yes, I block tasks. That's a better way of putting it. What days are client days? Which days are typically going to be podcast days? Other days that are more administrative, when I typically have meetings for certain stuff, check-ins with myself, those kinds of things. But it's a routine and a schedule. So every Monday, just for example, from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., I block time where I would schedule clients. Now, I won't typically have clients from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m., but that's the block that I would have set aside for my client load.
Just to clarify, you have a full-time job. You are a full-time college instructor, professor.
Yes.
That word is
not professor yet.
We're not safe to use that word yet? Okay. So Felicia has hours where she teaches,
mm-hmm.
and then she has everything else sort of open-ended because you're scheduling things, you're deciding when things are happening outside of your hours teaching and advising.
Yes.
So what Felicia will literally do is, every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. block clients, or I'm being arbitrary with my example, but literally blocking your tasks together helps you be more effective with them in that there's a mental changing of gears that occurs when you switch tasks. So if you can minimize task switching and do certain tasks all the way through, it's usually easier on you mentally and physically. You don't need to get the different stuff you need for those tasks and then start and stop and start and stop. Just like also with content creation, we sit down and we shoot videos. We don't do one video at a time. We do like 3, 4, 5 videos in one sitting, and then I have that lump of footage that I go and edit and turn into videos over the course of, days or weeks or whatever. But it's important to batch your tasks because you have less of a mental gear shift happening where you have to start and stop and reorient yourself mentally and physically to what you're doing. That's a big thing that you do with literally everything. Anytime you can do that, you should.
Yeah. The other thing that I do in terms of like time management is think about things that could be overlapped. Like I mentioned on a previous podcast that I sometimes need to call an insurance company. And sometimes depending on when you call, you might be on hold for quite a bit waiting for an agent. And so I have all the information ready to go. So when someone picks up, I can easily, answer any questions, but and give them the information that they need. But a lot of times I'll kind of, as I'm waiting, maybe I'll start like brainstorming an outline, or I might just like, run through my social media, see what things I need to, catch up on. But little things that don't involve a ton of mental energy, but just something else where I'm not just sitting and staring off into space while I'm like waiting for something to happen. So,
multitasking.
Yeah. And multitasking is like a fine line between, good and bad, I feel like.
Yeah, if you're doing too much at once, you're dividing your energy mentally and you're not really focused on a certain thing. But if you're literally like low brainwave sort of alpha state on on hold for a call, obviously that takes very little of your mental focus to do, so you can just do something else, really.
Yeah. And then I think I mentioned it, but the only other thing with like time management that really helps for me is, I look at my week as a whole and plan out when I might do different tasks that might be just random things. And in planning them out, I plan them for a certain day, and then I prioritize, like this has to get done by Tuesday, this has to get done by Wednesday. And then that way when I'm looking at, okay, it is Wednesday, I have my priorities that need to get done, and then the other stuff that can kind of wait until later in the week. And so being able to focus on those tasks first, especially if those priorities are ones that I don't want to do. If I start focusing on the easy stuff, the stuff that doesn't matter right away, I'm not getting to those priorities, and then it's stressful and, So.
Prioritizing, that is such a big word for being your own boss and also being an employee. Every interview you ever do, if you mention that you're good at prioritizing your tasks or you talk about prioritization, it's a plus. And for your business, it's no different. You want to get the most important stuff done first and not just bang out easy things to cross stuff off your list. Mm-hmm. There are ways to help prioritizing your tasks. If you have a physical pen and paper list, you can put little stars next to the most important stuff. If you have a digital task list, you can keep the high priority stuff at the top, slide things around, or however you have to do it to indicate to yourself that this is the most important thing to get done today. Mm-hmm. It's better to get one high priority task done than 3 low priority tasks.
Yes. Even though it might feel good, like, cause I like checking things off a list, and sometimes, I want to get done those other things that I can knock 3 or 4 things off of a list for, but I haven't actually sat down to do the big priority that might take a lot of time and mental energy. And then I don't feel as productive either, because I feel like I haven't accomplished the big thing that I needed to. And so sometimes just tackling that is what you really need to do.
Definitely. Oh, and the backup plan for waiting, I love that though. Like, cause if you're calling anyone, you're going to be on hold at some point. Mm-hmm. If you know that in advance and you don't waste time checking your email or doing like low mental things prior, and then you do them while you're on hold, I love that. That's good. Do you want to talk about grit?
Yes, because people talk about that word or say that word a lot.
What is it?
So Angela Duckworth, which we'll put the information down below.
Link in the description. Smash like button now.
So it's
YouTube.
It's considered, grit is like passion, perseverance. It's not talent, but it's
courage and resolve, strength of character.
Yes. So it's it's not
I have a computer.
It's not just like luck. It's the passion for what you do. It really helps you get through like the hard stuff, which there will be many hard things in private practice. But what that actually looks like is, when you think about private practice, there's a lot of delayed gratification that occurs. You're not, if you're accepting insurance, which I accept, I'm an insurance provider, you're not going to get paid tomorrow after you have a session. You got to bill, you got to wait for them to actually, for the claim to go through, and then for them to send you payment, which could look like 3-4 weeks. When you're starting out, you might not have clients right away. You might have 1 or 2, and you have to put in the work to get clients in your door. You have to invest the time. So that grit is that passion, the perseverance, the hard work for those long-term goals.
Well, delayed gratification is goes with a lot of things, and learning to leaning into delayed gratification and sort of accepting that and embracing it is a big thing for literally anything you want to do. If you want to get in shape, if you want to have a healthier marriage, anything, you need to invest time and not expect a payout or any kind of compensation for that time, and just build.
Yeah.
And investing is really a good term for what you're doing with your time when you're starting out. Because if you're a dietitian, you're just getting rolling with a private practice, you're not going to have clients. You're not going to have a following on social media. You're not going to have the skills or the systems set up right away. You have to get in there and do some stuff, and it's really uncomfortable at first.
Yeah.
With anything that you're pursuing, if you're an amateur, if you're not good at it yet, it's really uncomfortable. There's a huge learning curve for most things when you're setting out on such an endeavor as running your own business. So getting used to that discomfort and leaning into it and allowing yourself to sort of embrace it and push through it, that's, in a lot of ways, that's grit, I think.
Yeah.
Being able to tough it out and get through on the merit of your character.
Yes.
It builds character, as they say.
I like the leaning in, though. Like, that's a good way of, like, you're just like leaning into all that discomfort and the uncertainty, which is another thing in private practice. Is there will be many times of uncertainty. But we'll talk about that a little bit.
I think I'm borrowing the term leaning in from, there was an article I read about, and it was some stuff for like diversity training when I was in management too, about like women in the workforce and how women get talked over a lot, and they have a lot of times less of a presence physically in meetings and stuff. And like leaning in was like a literal thing with being at like a conference table or in a meeting, but then also it's sort of a mental thing too. And then I just stole it from that pretty much. Yeah, there's it's a shame that that's still the case in 2021, but we're getting there, hopefully. Be willing to grow and learn.
Yes, which I think ties into the grit and kind of the, pushing through times of discomfort and the uncomfortable uncertainty that is private practice and entrepreneurship. But your business is going to change. It's not going to look the same as when you started it on day one. I know mine has changed quite drastically over the years in terms of who I work with, the clients that I see, how I see clients face to face. I used to do a lot of home visits versus, now telehealth primarily. I've changed contracts. I've worked with companies and then moved away from working with companies. I did a couple of things like contract stuff with kids and schools and like cooking stuff, and then moved away from that. But there's an aspect of being able to, learn from experience. Maybe it worked well, maybe it didn't. And then just growing, you're learning so much in private practice. Like day one had no clue about insurance and how to bill. And now I do. And now I'm learning more about billing and more of like the in-depth look of it. But you have to be willing to learn and adapt once you have new information. You can't kind of stay in this space where, it's the way you've always done things, but being able to change and adapt to that.
Another general principle for employment and sort of life in general, but it especially applies to running your own business or your own private practice. And yeah, I mean, the first year you do anything is the most drastic period where you're learning the most in such a small period of time. Being able to take everything in and not set yourself in any number of ways for doing things. So do you want to talk about like a growth mindset?
Yeah, so there's what's called a growth versus, a fixed mindset. So the growth mindset kind of sounds like, growing. So the way that it's framed is that you're viewing any kind of like abilities and talents and skills, as things that are really capable of improvement. That our basic abilities can really be like developed and improved through hard work, dedication. Someone who has like a growth mindset would enjoy challenges. Enjoy new experiences. They'd be someone who's going to take risks, which again, if you're in private practice, there's risk involved because you're not sure if it'll work or when you're going to pay it, if you'll get paid sometimes, especially in the beginning. But being able to learn from any mistakes that you made, using those as like a learning opportunity. And then along with that is, the any kind of criticism, or feedback, not taking that personally, but as a way to, again, grow. So that would be that growth mindset.
I think there's a couple angles with a growth mindset that I find useful. Everyone's there's a lot of talk about, especially in like the business guru world, where it's like learn to love change, learn to love challenge, embrace it, love it, fall in love with discomfort and challenge. And if you're someone who can do that, more power to you. There are certain things that are easier to enjoy than others. In management, I used to like secretly enjoy the chaos of things falling apart, and because I was good at staying calm, and most people just kind of lose it, and it was funny to me. It was entertaining when that would happen, and I guess it's kind of dark, but whatever. It was like seriously, when big things would go wrong, I would always get a little bit excited about that. And it's not like you ever want things to go wrong, but it's like, all right, my time to shine. Here we go. Because if you have a skill, I was always good at staying calm. But there are other things where it's like if you really like the way something is done and then it changes, and you're expected to love that change, that's a load of crap. And you're not gonna love every change, and it's not like you're expected to fully embrace and love every change. A big point of this stuff is just being okay with it, being able to change. There's a book that every business student has read called Who Moved My Cheese? It's a good book. It's very short, but it highlights the discomfort of change, and being someone who is comfortable or can be comfortable with change is a big deal. It's important to not get too set into doing any one thing any particular way. Be open to change, not only because things may change without your control or your input, but you should also be open to changing things the way you do things because it might be better.
Yeah.
If you get used to doing something a certain way and it's not the best way to do it, you'll never discover the best way or a better way if you're too set into doing something a certain way.
Yeah, that's something that I constantly struggle with because I am very organized and very particular about things. And then I get to a point where, someone like Adam would point out, maybe a more efficient way of doing something or something I hadn't considered. And sometimes the gut reaction is like, I've always done it this way and this is working for me.
Totally natural.
Just because it's working doesn't mean it's the most efficient or the best way of doing something. So, being open to the feedback. And like you said, you don't have to love it necessarily, but being able to kind of have like a calm head about it, which it makes me think of the dietitian exam. There were some practice questions, and it was, the kitchen's on fire. There's rats in the storeroom. Someone called out. There was like all of these things, and then it's like, what do you do first? And like the correct answer is like assess the situation. Because and not freak out. And so that's I don't know. It just made me think of that.
Yeah, those questions are on open-ended interviews for management jobs too. And that's what it is. You're out of this and that food. 4 people called out. It's like, yeah, they set you up with the worst conditions. What do you do? It's like, all right, well, not lose my mind, I guess, is the first thing.
Don't panic, but that is a lot of what business is about too, where things might change. Like there might be a policy change on insurance.
Can you give us a specific example from your business and life?
Well, one of the things right now is the uncertainty with telehealth actually ends the end of June. So the state of the emergency where telehealth was, being practiced, even with maybe insurances that didn't typically have telehealth coverage. There's uncertainty there of whether or not it will still be covered after June 30th. And so knowing how to adapt to that. And so that's something I've been thinking about is, how does the business change if now telehealth is not covered, because that's primarily what I've been doing. Do I go back to, face-to-face appointments, but I don't have an office? So how to kind of work that. And so my first, instinct was kind of panic in a sense of, what am I going to do? And I had to take a step back and say, okay, what can I do? Well, right now I'm going to continue telehealth. I can keep updated, and I'm on the newsletter list for the insurances. I have the access to be able to call the insurance companies to find out information once they have it. And I have notifications set up. So when it happens, I'm prepared for it. And going back to some of my on-site for companies, so I don't have to worry about getting an office or anything like that. But that's kind of thinking through, okay, if this does happen, what can I do about it? And really kind of thinking about what things you can control. That's usually what's the most helpful for me is, what can I control in this situation? I can't make them keep telehealth, but I can, focus on the things that I can do.
So you found out that those changes were coming as of June 30th a while ago. That wasn't something you just discovered yesterday.
Yeah, it was like one of those things that was like a couple months ago. It was like starting to get talked about in the groups that I'm in. And then now some of the changes actually aren't posted yet.
But you knew it was coming.
Yes.
You knew it was coming like a month or two ago.
Knew it was, yes.
And you weren't just seething in rage for like a month or two.
Yes.
You were preparing. You were looking at the situation. You assessed the situation, right? And you decided, here's what I can do. Here's what I should prepare for. And you took steps to handle it in a way that's going to make sense when the changes come, if they come. You prepare for the worst, you hope for the best.
Yes.
Right? So, but you weren't just like, well, I guess I'm going to pack it up now. I'm done. Peraza Nutrition. It's just over. You didn't do that.
That's the end.
But you have to be able to lean into the change.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are times where you can look forward to it if it's going to mean maybe being more efficient. So what tips do you have for embracing change?
So that was one of the big things was, focusing on what you can control for sure. Kind of naming what you're feeling too, because sometimes I get caught up in like the emotion of things and the frustration. And sometimes just saying like, okay, I'm frustrated right now, but I frustrate the situation, and just kind of like saying it out loud, just, because a lot of things can be running through your head. Like, what am I going to do about this, this, and this? Sometimes just saying like, talking about it, writing it down, and then also asking for help. So what are other dietitians doing in these scenarios? Being able to talk to someone else who might be going through it, or just someone who's like an outside party who can give you a little perspective. Like, this isn't that big of a deal, depending on what the situation is or something like that. So that is something too. So talking about it, focusing on what you can control, and sometimes just, I'm a list maker. So making a list about things like, okay, what can I do? And again, looking at it as, I'm going to prepare for the worst case scenario. So what will I do and what can I do in those situations, and having a plan in place.
That said, the worst case scenario is rarely what actually happens. And you don't need to just assume that that's going to be what you have to deal with. But there's a lot of things with change where if you kind of set yourself up to frame change in a certain way, you can actually be like, reframing is one of those things where I don't know if that's commonly talked about or known, but like you can look at a situation and change your perspective on it to where you feel better about it because you decide that it means one thing to you when it meant another to you yesterday. So you can sort of actively decide how you interpret things. And then with self-talk and like talking to others, I think that helps to promote self-awareness and really kind of zoom out of a situation and look at it from a more objective angle, because a lot of times when you're in your own head, you're thinking about things, you're subconsciously running it through the filter of, your own personality, and you're injecting a lot of circumstances onto situations that maybe aren't there. I think talking to other people about stuff helps. Like when I was learning in management and a lot of things, music too, like I would talk to people and their perspective and their interpretation was usually so foreign to me that I didn't think about a lot of the things that they would say, and it would completely change my angle on the situation. And to be honest, most things aren't that big of a deal.
That's very true.
Anyway, very few things really matter that much. So it's probably not as big of a deal as you think it is.
Yes.
Usually.
There's usually always some kind of solution.
Oh, yeah. There's always something you can do. Just figuring it out. Google.com is good for that.
That is very true. I've used that quite a bit.
So critical thinking, when you're assessing your situation, what is critical thinking? And what kind of skills are involved with critical thinking?
So I did pull a definition for this one.
All right, lay it on me.
It needed to have a definition.
Do you have it right now?
So definition, critical thinking is the process of analyzing information to get the best answer to a question or problem. So you're drawing upon your own experiences, reasoning, observation, communication with others, but you're making an informed decision about something.
I have a slightly different definition.
Oh.
The objective analysis and evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment. I think the key word there is objective.
Yes.
Looking at things as they are and, having an objective take rather than inserting yourself. We just talked about that.
Yes.
Being objective.
Yeah. So, communication's involved here, problem-solving skills, collaboration. This is just important overall. Critical thinking skills, but with private practice, you need to make informed decisions about things. I mean, even the given example that we had about this, everything's going wrong. What do you do? And being able to think critically and take a step back, and having forming an informed opinion about something or making a decision about something, is key.
Hope we're not coming off preachy here. This is all stuff that we are actively managing for ourselves day to day. We don't have this figured out. This is just the approach to getting this stuff done. And this is sort of the formula for Felicia's success with her business. Just to throw it out there.
Yes.
If you want to be someone who has hundreds of clients, an LLC, and is successful with this stuff, this is sort of her path to it.
Yeah.
Just to put it out there.
No, and that's a good point because especially, with private practice, but I'm also an educator too. So I'm looking a lot at things like critical thinking and teaching, these critical thinking skills. So it's something that I'm actively practicing myself. So yes, I'm glad you mentioned
Felicia and everyone struggles with this stuff. It's not, a lot of it's not intuitive.
No.
It's hard to be objective and think critically about things because a lot of things have an emotional response, and it's hard to resist that. So there's a level of self-awareness that comes into play where the Dunning-Kruger effect. We just talked about this too. But there's this tendency to think you know more about something than you actually do when you're an amateur at it or when you're just getting started. So when your level of knowledge about something increases, you get to a point where you feel as though you're good at something, but you still have so much more to learn. Mm-hmm. It's a trap. It's just a thing of human psychology. And in order to combat it best, I think you just have to sort of develop a level of self-awareness that comes with critical thinking.
Yes. Yeah. Self-awareness. Actively listening is another thing that goes along with critically thinking. Being able to, was it seek first to understand?
We actually have self-awareness in our little talk list here. I didn't know that.
Right, no, cool. It was good that you mentioned that.
Seek first to understand, then be understood?
Yes. Yeah. Because you can't really make, an informed decision necessarily about something, especially if you're uncertain about it. Oh my. Unless you are actively listening to whether it's somebody's talking or, if you're reading something, being able to evaluate that information. But, that is a crucial thing too, is being able to actively listen to make then your informed, decision about something.
Asking questions?
Yes, asking questions, confirm what you know.
Being the idiot in the room. Hey, this is a dumb question, but don't be afraid to do that.
Yes.
Everyone's thinking it. You're the one saying it.
Yes.
So ask the question. Yeah.
And follow-up questions too. Confirm maybe what you know, but then ask questions to follow up to that, or on that. And then questioning your own assumptions and biases, to be able to logically think through something.
That's how I live my life. Question everything.
Never
assume.
Yes. That is.
You know what happens when you assume?
Please don't say it.
Okay.
Okay. I think everyone knows. But do they?
What? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you make an ass of you and me.
We can't say that.
What do you mean? An ass is a donkey. It's an animal. Okay? How dare you?
Okay. We were talking about donkeys in this situation.
Ethical considerations. Moving right along. What ethical considerations do you have to consider? What are the ethics of being a dietitian, and how do they involve themselves in your private practice?
Yes. So as a dietitian, there is a code of ethics that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has on the website that you agreed to follow in becoming a dietitian. But with the ethics, I'm going to talk about some of the principles and standards that go along with ethical practice. But I just want to say that this is so important for private practice, especially when you are the one that is in charge of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and you don't have somebody looking over you to make sure that what you're doing is, sound and, within scope of practice and all of that. So with dietitians, again, there's this code of ethics that the Academy has, and there's different principles and standards. So there's forms. Going to give a couple an example for each of those. One is the competence and professional development in practice, which non-maleficence, I think is the way it's said, non-malefice. I'm saying that wrong, but it'll be in the description below. But this is basically that you are utilizing evidence-based approaches within your areas of competency. You're continuously developing, enhancing your expertise, recognizing what limitations you might have. So that would be one area where you're going to be practicing, again, with that code of ethics in mind. The integrity in personal and organizational behaviors and practices. So disclosing any conflicts of interest with clients, maintaining and appropriately using your credentials.
Oh, I think you were going for non-malfeasance.
Yes. Sorry.
I wasn't sure what you're talking about.
I did not do a good job with that word.
We got there. Non-malfeasance. Yeah.
It's there. So that would be autonomy, what I just described. And then professionalism, which is under beneficence. Gosh, I cannot
Probably
say.
beneficence. It's,
Yes. You should just say all
Anyway,
those.
what? So we're going for social responsibility here?
Yeah, justice. I know that one. But with professionalism, it's respecting the values, the rights, the knowledge and skills of not just, clients, but also your colleagues. And then that justice. So that social responsibility, promoting fairness and objectivity. So those are just highlights. The code of ethics is long, but I point this out as a key thing in private practice because you need to be up to date on the latest nutrition protocols, the latest research, making sure that you're working within your scope of practice. And it's so important because, again, you don't have a boss or somebody that's looking over you to say, hey, you can't take on this client because it's not within your scope of practice. Or, hey, maybe you're not the most competent to deal with this situation in terms of maybe a client has an advanced stage of a certain condition and it's not something that you feel comfortable with, but you do it anyway because, hey, it's a client and it's money. You are the one monitoring yourself. So you have to make sure that you are abiding by the code of ethics. And then again, that scope of practice also comes along with that. Clean claims, being an insurance provider, again, making sure that when you're submitting a claim, it is true and accurate. You're not adding time to, have another unit of billing if you didn't meet that time with a client. So those are, again, things that can not only get you into serious trouble, but again, could be doing harm to your clients.
The term self-management gets thrown around with this sort of thing. If you're talking about an employee at a business, and if you're in management, I hate that I refer to this all the time, but it's what I know. You enjoy when employees are self-managing, and when you are a business of one, when you're wearing all the hats, it's up to you to self-manage with this stuff and hold yourself accountable. No one's got a true moral compass for this stuff. It's tempting to, add it an extra unit of time or whatever. Holding yourself responsible and acting with integrity is a difficult thing to do, but it will improve your life in many ways, not just with staying out of trouble in your business. If you can build integrity into your own personality and your actions, it's going to help you with everything. In this case, and I define integrity as doing the right thing when no one's watching.
Yes.
That's kind of my definition for it.
That's the one.
And it's really cheesy when people say if you lie, you're only lying to yourself. That's the whole thing. You're only lying to yourself. You're not fooling anyone or whatever. But I took that. That was 5 years ago. I just decided to take that really seriously, and it made a big difference for me. It was 7 years ago, but it was when I started climbing the ranks at work. But that was a big change for me, and I think it would be for anyone in private practice. If you have the opportunity to do something when no one's watching, that is not the best thing to do, but no one will know. But if you decide to do the right thing anyway in that moment, you'll know. You'll know about yourself what you did and what you didn't do. And when you do the wrong thing when no one's watching, it's like, I don't know, I'm not a religious person, but it's like your soul takes a hit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like your perception of yourself is damaged, and then you know what you did, and it kind of eats away a little bit in your brain.
Yeah.
It's like when you're honest in situations where if you weren't, it wouldn't matter. When you're the only person that knows, you're the most important person to know or not know how much integrity you have.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you know you did the right thing, the way you feel about that is more important. And then you have the confidence in situations where it does come up. Or there are cases where you think no one's watching and someone is.
That was what I was thinking is, it's, they always say when no one's watching, but how do you know sometimes if no one's watching?
But that's not the point, though. You should just do it anyway.
Yeah. And it's like the mental stress of that too, will someone find out? And like all of that can eat away at you too. So even if, you're not going to get caught necessarily, I mean, it's still that there's so much wrong with that, but also the mental stress that you'll likely endure as to, knowing that you didn't do the right thing or the thing that was supposed to be.
When you do the right thing, you know you did the right thing. And if you're not someone who, if you struggle with self-confidence, I think this is the biggest thing you can change about your life. If you act in a way that if you employ integrity forthright with everything you do, your confidence will skyrocket because you'll be sure that it doesn't matter what anyone sees or what anyone knows or what, there's no secret. If you do the right thing and know you did it, you're going to be able to charge into situations and blow through things that you maybe would have questioned yourself with otherwise. This is a really big thing that I think, man, it's such an underutilized tool in my opinion, and it's something you have control over.
Yeah.
All right, so do you want to get into like staying up to date on research and like staying current with your nutritional knowledge as a means of integrity?
Yeah. So, and this is something, again, one of the nice things, which can be a bad thing too, is that the scope of practice for dietitians is pretty broad because there's so many areas of practice. So you really have to be up to date on whatever your specific scope is. So obviously, dietitian, you could do a lot of different things, and I think I mentioned before, I don't work with certain populations, like with eating disorders or even like areas of cancer too, because like active treatment, because I'm not steeped in that area of research and knowledge and the latest practices or anything like that, or even like the little intricacies of, like products and things like that too. So not just like the science behind it, but even like, good products that someone might use in these cases. I don't have that. So I'm not doing right by my clients in those situations.
This is a very good example of maintaining integrity and knowing, because we've talked about referring out before.
Yes.
And you might think off the bat, why would you ever refer a client away from your business towards somebody else? Mm-hmm. And the reason is you're staying true to yourself. You're doing the best for that client, whether or not they'd find out that you weren't giving the best information. If you know someone else would suit that client better, sending them to that other person is the right thing to do. And that way, you're not kind of giving them nutritional advice that's maybe not the best. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that you're not the best person for this. Or that if you know somebody who's better for this than you are, referring that client to someone else is the better thing to do.
Yeah.
But you were saying about staying up to date on research.
Yeah. So staying up to date, and there's a lot to stay up to date on with research, and the latest things. So the Academy of Nutrition has like smart briefs, which I find are really helpful. So I think it's a daily email that you get with like research highlights, and so then that's really nice to be able to say like, oh, this is relates to my practice, so I'm going to click on this, save it for later, or whatnot. The journal articles, those are really helpful. I utilize Today's Dietitian quite a bit because they have a lot of resources, but they also have continuing ed, and usually they have like free ones, but also like lower cost ones too. But I find that like having the email alerts is helpful because you can get caught up in everything else that you're doing with private practice. So being able to have like a specific email that I have, the updates come for nutrition. And then I check that again in building my processes and having like a system in place. every, a certain day of the week, usually Fridays or my admin type things, that's when I would go through those emails or, go through any journal articles I might have saved and again, keep myself up to date. But having a system in place is really helpful for that. So it's not so overwhelming to figure out what you've missed in terms of new research and practices. So.
Okay. Sounds good. We're wrapping it up here. We're coming up on the end.
We are.
Do you want to go through any final words for all of these skills being involved as an entrepreneur?
Yes. So the first one is being able to have thick skin, which is not something I like that term, having thicker skin, but, private practice, handling.
Being bulletproof.
Yes.
Just bounces off of you. Pew, pew,
And that takes time. When I first started my practice to now, when someone had a negative comment about something that I did or said something, maybe a little off in a session where I probably didn't help them in the best way that I should because I was a new dietitian, being able to roll with that and learn and grow from those experiences, think about what you can learn from something. But there's a lot of stress involved. So being able to have, thicker skin.
And a support system.
Yes.
Is good. We didn't talk about that.
No, and that was on my final words of advice too. Like the support system is key. Not only just to, when you have these moments of whether it's stress, rejection, or whatever it is, being able to talk to someone else who has been through that, to not feel like you're so alone, but also be able to collaborate with others, bounce ideas off of people, really just learn from people's experiences. Just yesterday, I was in a Zoom call with 3 other health coaches actually, and it's nice to be able to have those. We were on it for 3 hours talking about what's been going on and experiences and where people are kind of feeling stuck, and it just at the end it feels really invigorating. Just when you're talking through things and being able to help someone else, but also for them to give you feedback too, and I don't know, it can help to get you out of a business rut, or if you're in a slump or not sure what to do next, being able to just brainstorm with other people who are in that space can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think also it helps if you have friends that are in the industry or a supportive spouse or significant other, your family, your parents or anyone who's close to you. It helps if those people are in your corner with this.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't always have control over that, but I think it can make a positive impact on that if you sort of bring them in and share those things, or if you, seek to make friends with the people that do what you do rather than just keeping that relationship sort of cold and businesslike. You can break bread with those people a little bit, hang out. It's a good idea to have friends that do what you do, because then you can talk to people in a way where they understand you.
Yes.
People who don't do what you do, they don't understand what you're going through the way that someone who does would.
Yeah,
So
they
it can
can
help to have friends
sympathize,
there.
but they can't really empathize with what's going on. Haven't been there. It's really important to have. It's nice having two areas where you have someone who's steeped in it and then someone who isn't. So being able to have those different types of interactions with people. But that support is really key.
So your parents don't know dietetics, but they are fully supportive of what you do.
Yes.
But then you also have friends who are dietitians.
Yes.
And some of which are in private practice themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but they're your friends too.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's nice to be able to socialize with people who do what you do as well. I know not everyone has control over that, but if you can, I think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah. And then something we talked about, a lot of different skills, but just because you might be able to do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And I mean that in accounting and finance and all of that. There's, knowing the basics and having an understanding, but maybe hiring, which I would highly suggest, a tax accountant and, especially for your payroll if you have employees and things like that. So
it's good to know what you should outsource.
Yes. And that's something else, thinking critically about your business, is being able to, okay, look at all these different pieces. Where am I spending a lot of time? Can I outsource this? Am I the best person to handle this in my practice? Or is there someone more qualified to do this, like writing a contract or looking over your files and forms, maybe working with an attorney on a short-term basis, but being able to enlist that help and knowing when to ask for help and bring somebody on, not necessarily even as an employee, but as a contract,
I think it's important to consider your time.
Yes.
If you can spend 5 hours doing something, or you can pay someone $50 to do it, what's worth it, or $100, or whatever. I mean, how you value your time, and also how well it'll get done. I mean, you pay an accountant, you outsourced some marketing materials, some branding stuff. I mean, it's just important to self-assess and decide whether or not this is better to pay out or do yourself.
Yeah,
a lot of times doing things yourself saves money and you learn a skill, but sometimes you're not going to become a CPA just to run your practice.
That's such a good point. It's I think one of the things you said to me, which resonated a lot, is, do you need to be a dietitian to do this? And that's something that I think about, and I'm probably butchering what you said about it, but certain areas of the business where I don't need to be, like, a dietitian doesn't need to do this. A dietitian doesn't need to be the one scheduled, and someone needs to post this to social media, put a graphic, and so.
Your CPA, your accountant, is not a dietitian.
Yes. She can do my taxes.
I think what I asked you was, what do you need the master's degree to do? Like, what don't you need the degree to do?
Yeah.
What does a dietitian need to do, and what do they not need to be the one doing it? Like, if there's tons of stuff in your business that you don't need the credential to be the one doing. Mm-hmm. Those things are things that you should, if it makes sense financially and for your time, just have someone else do it.
Yeah. And in the beginning, it might not be something where you might be, again, wearing all the hats. I mean, I still wear many hats in the business, but like, you might be wearing all the hats.
That's a lie. You never wear hats.
And outsourcing is not an option in the beginning part, but you might find down the line, okay, and one of the things I ask myself is, where am I spending a lot of time? And one of those things was actually with, like, scheduling. And that was before I put, like, a scheduling tool on my website, which I still get people who call and schedule an appointment, but it greatly decreased the amount of time. So sometimes it's getting software and maybe not hiring somebody to take on
paying for software.
Yes.
Can be valuable too. Paying for automation. Felicia makes hats. I
do make hats. That's
Warm Your Melon? Isn't that what it's called?
It is called Warm Your Melon.
She's an Etsy store. She knits these hats. They're cute. One's a watermelon.
Yes.
She knits stuff where it's piling up on the couch. I'm swimming in knitted animals. There's a squid hanging above us right now that she knitted herself.
Yes.
All right, just a quick recap.
Mascot.
Organizational skills. Yeah, that's the business mascot. Time management, grit, being willing to grow and learn, critical thinking, ethical considerations, and the like. And, that's going to do it for us here, I think. Any questions, feel free to leave a comment. If you're listening to this, we do also have these up on YouTube. We have a fancy green screen now. I'm not even sure where we are. We're actually in Atlantis or whatever.
Can we be in the jungle?
We can be in the jungle. We're going to be in the jungle. All right. So, that's going to do it for us here at the My Dietitian Journey podcast. Please feel free to leave a comment. Smash the like button if you're on YouTube. Leave a rating for us on iTunes or Spotify or wherever the podcast is.
It's everywhere.
It does help, though. Actually helps a lot. But that's going to do it for us. Thanks so much.